Welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about life, relationships, and being human. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question for me, you can send that to me anonymously at asksean.org. So this video is kind of a follow-up on the last one that I did. In that previous video, I talked about coming off a horse, kind of an unplanned equine dismount. And just the wisdom of not just getting back on the horse, but kind of working through the discomfort, working through kind of just helping the muscles to move, and just it's kind of reflecting on that principle in various ways. So, but in this video, I've been thinking about kind of in the weeks after the fall, just the complexity of us, and that we can have parts of us that feel one thing and parts of us that feel another. So, there are parts of me that at this point in my riding journey and the nature of that fall that I took, have not felt any reservations or hesitations about getting back on the saddle or riding that particular horse. And so there's been ways in which my system has felt very calm and very settled about that. And there's been some very specific places in instances where I'm not feeling that. And where there's sort of just kind of this body memory of like, this reminds us a little bit of that moment when we came off the horse. And so it's been really fascinating to, as I continue to have lessons, to have parts of the lesson where my system's totally fine, and then to do certain kinds of things, certain maneuvers that hearken to or like close enough to that moment when I came off that there's this tension that comes into my body, there's a bracing that starts to happen. And so it's been really remarkable. And so it just has me thinking about this principle that like we do need to trust our bodies, and we need to trust parts of us that may have feelings about something that are different from what other parts of us feel, right? Like we're complex beings, and different parts of the psyche and different parts of the body like can carry information that might not be coming up for other aspects of us. And so because it wouldn't be good for me to just ignore that tension and that bracing and that sort of that anxious feeling in my body, that nervousness. At the same time, I don't want to let that totally dominate, right? Like if I let that totally dominate, then I won't get back on the horse at all. I won't have a riding lesson at all. And so this gets into then a related principle of like we can push ourselves and still be gentle, right? Like, so, with my riding lessons, there have been moments where like I needed to slow down and go back to the walk. Like I could feel that like the tension was building. I was bracing more and more, and it was like, okay, this is starting to not be productive. My system is kind of working itself up. But that is not the time to stop the lesson. Like that's the time to slow things down, to, maybe catch my breath a bit, maybe do that same exercise, that same thing again, or try to do a smaller bite. Like that's kind of the goal here is if we're attempting something and it's just feeling like too much, the answer isn't to not do it at all, but to see, okay, how can I do some of that in a more titrated way? Because the reality is like I need to feel some of that activation as part of trying to work through it, right? And so it's like, and so that's what I've been doing these past several lessons is we're doing, various things. In some parts of the lesson, like I don't have any activation at all because it's like stuff that's not, hitting that moment, that my body's still like, is this about to be dangerous? And parts of the lesson where we're specifically working on, because I'm kind of honing in on, okay, it's when we're doing this particular kind of thing in this direction around the ring, like that's activating this. And so we're doing actually more of that, but we're doing it in this measured way. We're not doing it like prolonged. We're doing it in repetitious bites, and then we will alternate between, sort of the thing that's harder and then something that's like doesn't have any activation at all. So sort of like doing reps of something, right? You think in terms of like at the gym. And so it is gradually working through, right? Like I'm helping my system, helping that part of me, helping my body to experience like, this can be okay, we can be fine, like helping it re-experience that this is safe, and that we're going to be all right, and like we're not going to come off every single time that we do something that sort of reminds us of that moment. So it's such a key thing, right? Like if I ignored that feeling in my body, like I wouldn't, you can't push through it by just like gritting, your teeth and like you can't muscle your way through that, right? Like that just builds more tension, which with horseback riding is not helpful, but in the rest of life isn't either. Like the tension and the bracing. So it's like there is this like I do need to like slow it down and whatnot. But again, if I don't go to that space at all, then I'm also not going to work through it, right? If I'm just like, well, I'm just never going to do that, anything that reminds me of that, well, like that's going to really limit the horseback riding I can do, and that'll really limit the rest of my life, honestly. Like because that this is a emblematic of like this principle applies to all of life, right? Like okay, here's a particular area where it shows up on the back when I'm riding on the back of a horse, right? But the same kind of thing can happen in other aspects of life. And it's like, okay, well, I just never go into that situation. I'll just never have that kind of conversation. It's like, well, that's just going to make my world smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Like the goal is to help these places heal, to help these parts of us work through the tension, the bracing, the like, kind of feeling until we can get back to where we're in a relaxed, but like kind of toned in the sense of like my muscles are active and are present and I'm capable of moving and whatnot. But I'm not, I'm not like in that bracing, that overly tense place. My system is supporting itself, but is grounded and is calm. So I just, wanted to share kind of some more of these in-process thoughts about this, that like, kind of listen to your body, listen to your insides, when there's parts of you that are not feeling good about something, pay attention to that. And don't just avoid that thing, but try to get really purposeful and strategic about how can you approach that in a way that's going to be uncomfortable, that's still bringing up some activation, but where you're doing it in small enough bites that you can repeat it, in intervals and sort of kind of help it work through, right? Like it's, again, like in a muscle analogy, right? Like if you had scar tissue, like you would be doing physical therapy of kind of doing certain movements to kind of help that, that work through so that's less and less creaky, like it's where it can move smoothly. The tissue, isn't getting stuck or, hanging in places. And so that is uncomfortable. Like discomfort is not our enemy. We should not ignore discomfort, but we also shouldn't just avoid it, right? Like the goal is like sort of the right amount of kind of strategic discomfort. Hope that in places in your life where your body is maybe telling you something or some part of you is telling you something, I hope that you will pay attention to that. And I hope that you will not just avoid those areas where your body or some part of you is telling you something, but that you'll be thinking about how can you gently push yourself to gradually work through that discomfort in a kind of a measured, kind of strategic way. So, until next time, peace be with you.